It looked like a normal, peaceful college morning when Professor Noman finished his lecture and left the social sciences building. He talked casually with some of his students while he walked slowly toward the faculty club, part of his daily routine. Just an average college professor proceeding through an average college day.
Okay, man?
Yeah.
Let me have your attention quickly while it's still fresh in your mind. Will you all please write down exactly what you remember about the attacker? Describe him and what he was wearing if you can. You know, the color of his clothes, color of his shoes, his hair color, his eyes. Please, take out a piece of paper and write it down specifically. It may be valuable as evidence, and we'll use that to catch him. You okay?
Yes, I'm fine.
Real
I'll
good.
be all right.
Okay. Let me see what you've written. Thank you. Thank you.
This attack was filmed. It was not a genuine assault by an angry student, but was part of an experiment. The actual experiment, which we've staged, was conducted on the campus of California State University in Hayward. The purpose was to test the human ability to recall events and appearances. Immediately after the staged attack, the researcher in charge of the experiment took statements from witnesses. He wanted to check what they had seen so that 7 weeks later, he could compare what each of these witnesses remembered seeing.
You okay now?
Yes,
Sure.
I'm fine.
Okay, get your hair cleaned.
What is memory? Is it a kind of mental motion picture? One that reproduces incidents complete with sounds, sights, and feelings? Or is it like snapshots in an album? Are memories a product of the physical brain, recorded on molecules and nerves? Or are they spirits, conjured up from the void of time? Whatever memory is, it lies right at the center of being human. Without memory, you couldn't think because you couldn't hold any thoughts in mind. You couldn't even speak intelligently because you couldn't remember the words that just passed between your teeth. Memory is basic to our conscious thinking, and yet it's a mystery. Of course, science has been puzzling over the mysteries of the mind for years now. And we do have ideas of how the brain creates memories. In a very rough way, we can compare it to the workings of a calculator. But it's difficult to see the circuits in the brain, much less see a memory there. To study the process of memory, scientists use the black box approach. From what goes into the box, and what comes out, they must deduce what goes on inside. Now, you can see my face, but how do you know what's going on behind these eyes and between these ears? I can't always claim to know that myself. For in a very true sense, my head is a black box. Still, scientists have managed to make some fascinating discoveries about my memory and about yours. Both our memories work in much the same way. You remember a picnic, but did you realize that each sense has a memory? Sights, sounds, smells, tastes, all come back. Take the eye, for example. It seems to perceive events as smooth, flowing action. But actually, the eye registers a series of separate images. The sensory nerves themselves store or remember the information. This is the first stage of memory and is called sensory information storage. The senses send everything that stimulates them, even trivial detail. But the brain screens out insignificant items at the synapses, which lead to the centers of consciousness. Once an item enters the conscious mind, it also enters the second stage of memory, the short-term memory. Short-term memory is the memory of the present, memory of here and now. And because we think in words, much of our short-term memory operates on sounds. The brain converts sensory information into words.
What do you want to do now? More what? More what?
Ali, a talented fellow, can communicate in sign language. He remembers hand signals which stand for objects and desires. But his brain probably can't translate these motions into words.
Good boy. Yeah. Now you tickle me. Okay.
Hello? Hi.
But the human mind turns life into
Yeah,
words.
what's the number?
And by rehearsing words, we can hold symbols in mind,
223.
in short-term
Right, I'll
memory.
ring you back. 885223. 885223. 885.
And how short is short-term? Usually less than 15 seconds. Then the next items catch our minds, and the first seem to fade away, like steam into dry air. Short-term memory also has an extremely small capacity. The most it can hold is about 7 items. That is, items not related to each other, like random numbers.
8495.
Oh, good, Judy. That was wonderful. Should we do one more? Okay. Give me this one. 57281.
If we try recalling more than 7 random items, gaps appear, and we jumble the sequence as well.
273645.
918. 2 7 3 6 4 3 4 5.
Right. Very good.
Maybe 7 is enough, though, just enough to cover a telephone number. That's short-term memory. To retain a number for more than 15 seconds, we need long-term memory. Long-term memory is the third stage of the memory system. It can hold the memories of a lifetime. Only the most important events and facts are stored here, and once an item is stored in long-term memory, it's usually stored forever. The memories of one life are a treasure of knowledge. The group memory of a people is the blueprint of a civilization. However, even the group memory doesn't include much fact on the mysteries of the memory process. We do know that long-term memories fall into 2 basic categories. The first is called episodic, because the mind stores and recalls events or episodes. An odor, like the cologne your first date wore, gives quick recall. One whiff, and you may relive the whole episode. The other type of long-term memory stores and retrieves information mainly by words. It's called semantic memory. Both semantic and episodic are equally important to long-term memory. And all three stages of memory, sensory information storage, short-term memory, and long-term memory, are essential to life. But we all forget as well as remember, like this witness. 7 weeks ago, the witness signed a statement swearing to what he saw when Professor Noman was attacked on campus. Now, the experimenter is asking the witnesses what they remember seeing and for identification of the attacker. Does the witness remember what he swore he saw?
Based on that last impression, you still feel you'd be able to identify the man who attacked Professor Noman?
Yeah, it'd be hard to forget a man that did something like that.
Do you think you could pick him out of some mugshots?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay. Let's just see how you do. Why don't you look through these and see if you can pick out the man who attacked
The
him?
eyewitnesses to the staged attack were asked to pick the attacker from a series of 6 photographs. The photos included the true assailant, 4 young men who look similar in their facial features and clothing, plus a photo of the innocent bystander. This innocent bystander was the young man, you may recall, who joined the group just before the attack. Actually, he was part of the experiment, chosen for his resemblance to the attacker. This innocent bystander was selected as the assailant by 25% of the eyewitnesses. Only 40% chose the actual assailant. But the experimenter had a film of the attack.
Let's see.
He's the one that did it.
That's not the one. He's someone else. Someone who looked very much like this man. In fact, let me show you a videotape replay of the event, and you see who did it, okay?
Okay.
Here we go.
I could have sworn, though, because they look so much.
Well, just pay attention to the screen and see what you see.
The film identified the real
Who
attacker
he is?
and proved that witnessing an event doesn't mean that you'll remember exactly what happened. But how could anyone forget an attacker's face? One way is the failure to pass information from short-term to long-term memory. Even rehearsing may not always succeed.
Do you remember Vince's speech, July 4th, 1964?
Yeah.
Oh, but since then I've moved. I've got a brand new telephone number. It's the 415-555-12. Excuse me, 12.
Do you have a pencil?
No, I
David,
don't.
do you have a pencil?
No, I'm sorry, I don't. Oh, wait a sec. Are you interested in doing some work? I have a really easy gig for you if you call me on Tuesday.
Okay.
All right. Call me Tuesday at 6 o'clock. Make it 6:30. Are you free 6:30?
In the morning?
No, 6:30 a.m.
A.M.?
Yeah.
Okay, I can.
Yeah, I'll be terrific. And
Okay.
it's push walk.
Push, P-U-S-H-W-A-P? O-P. O operator or O letter?
Push walk.
But which O is it?
But novelty, high emotions, or strong meaning get our attention. And attention assures a fact or event of a long, strong memory.
What?
However, memories can interfere with each other, especially when you're trying to learn too many items at once.
Oh, fantastic.
I want you to meet some friends of mine. This is Stuart, and this is Felicia and Malcolm, Nancy, and Gary. Hey, this is Julie. This is Julie. I'm Johnny. Hey, look, I got a split, man. So, like, introduce yourself around and have a ball.
Hi. I know girls aren't supposed to shake hands, but I always do that.
Another way to forget is in the process of retrieval. For factual information, the memory system seems to use verbal filing cards. Sometimes, though, the mind confuses its verbal files, particularly if the memories have meanings which could be confused.
Well, I don't know. It's all right. That's in every contract.
That's what they call a sanity clause.
You can't fool me. There ain't no sanity clause.
Hi, I remember from the Isle of Wight Music Festival, in 1956.
66. Wait. That was a funny year. Because I remember I was doing something in a hotel room, but I can't remember exactly what it was. That wasn't you.
No,
This was a
that
guy.
wasn't me.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh,
well, no, it wasn't what you think. We were.
no.
It's a funny story. We were trying to take. We were trying to call up this.
As our tentative young lad discovered, the recall of events works on a different principle than remembering facts and information. Recall of events is organized around landmarks, usually the most vivid incidents. The less gaudy events are either hazy or vanished altogether. But we try to reconstruct the details, as this psychologist explains to his friend.
Memory seems to be organized this way, around clusters of things that we know well. Let me see how you do. Where were you on, say, January 15th, 1963?
January 15th, 1963, yes. Do you really know?
Oh, I really know. Do you know?
January 15th. Well, if I can talk about it, I was in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
I was at the Second City, working at the Second City.
Mm-hmm. Not Chicago.
It wasn't Chicago.
Yet, it's this very process of reconstruction that makes memory so treacherous. In using your knowledge of how things operate in life, you pretty much have to accept plausible suggestions, even if they're dead wrong.
Oh! Stop there!
324 arrival.
Kiss all, 324. Kiss Savannah.
1921, 11.
Now, as an eyewitness, can you recall which arrived first, the patrol car or the ambulance? Well, you probably had to think a moment, but the truth is, no ambulance ever did arrive. But if you were asked this question a week later, the chance is very good you would imagine an ambulance. You might end up with a real memory that you could actually see, but which never happened. So much for memory failures. How about memory improvements? There are methods to increase recall dramatically. They use tricks like connecting facts with strange graphic images. But listen to some masters tell about it.
Good evening. May I take your order here?
Yes. Scotch on the rocks with a splash of soda.
Like, Kahlua and soda.
Lemon mint soda.
Soda. Singapore Sling.
She wants a vodka north. Let me have a drambuie, huh?
And I want a black Russian.
That's wine.
All right.
Singapore Sling about yay high, that high.
I like a margarita.
Martini. Write it down.
Collins with 2 green olives. All right, I'll get it.
You gotta write it down. You can't remember all of this.
Her problem is that she has to get the material, the drink orders, from short-term memory to long-term memory. And you can't do that unless you have special techniques. Now, David, tonight we have here Arthur Bornstein.
David meets a memory expert who has written a book about his technique.
Hello, Mr. Bornstein.
Pleased to meet you, Dave.
That's Bornstein?
Yeah, Bornstein. You might picture me with a little baby in my arms, and just born, and I'm feeding the baby with a stein. Get the picture?
Man who feeds baby beer.
Bornstein.
Right.
You got
Okay,
the idea.
I get it. Now, what we saw was the waitress, right? And she had to make all of that into long-term memory, right? Mm-hmm. So what we need is some association to make that work.
All right, now, this lady, let's say she's ordering...
Margarita.
A margarita? She looks like a margarita. I just projected. She looks just like a margarita. Get the picture?
Yes.
Right. Now, this man... Martini. Look at his forehead. Notice that big M inscribed in his hairline. So as soon as you look at it, M, for martini.
Collins with 2 green
She wants a
olives.
vodka Collins with 2 green olives. I see. Now, look at her laugh marks. There's a V, and I pictured a big C in her hairline, big fluffy hair, and those eyeglasses are the 2 green olives. Did you feel the stimulus of the associations working with
Not only that, it's kind of like, it's very nice.
And you're creating the images in your own memory. Actually, it's how you program the information into your mind that really counts.
Fine. Thank you very much. Now, let's see how the waitress is doing.
Hey, look who's here. Great. Very good. Excellent. Right.
Yes, being short. Yeah, and I even have your draft boy.
Here's to your memory, baby.
Memorizing a complicated list satisfies many of us. But some researchers want to know how a physical organ like the brain recreates an event or recalls a fact. Sir Wilder Penfield has probed the brains of his surgical patients with fine electrodes and conjured up memories without their control.
Under local anesthesia, do you remember the pain?
There wasn't.
When we stimulated at 3, you had a tingling in your thumb. You've probably forgotten now. When we stimulated 11, you opened your mouth and made a sound like, ah, until I pulled away the electrode and then you stopped. I don't even know if you knew why you were doing it. Down here, which is just a little margin here in the temporal lobe, it changed your hearing so that you found it difficult to hear. And then underneath this, down into the crack there, we stimulated, and to my astonishment, you said, I hear music.
If touching electric probes to the same spot raises the same memory again and again, it suggests a physical route. We call this route the engram. But it has never been seen or found. So we enter the black box, perhaps to look for special molecules which record memories like tiny books or cassettes. The brain is a cauldron of chemical activities. But can we find a memory? Perhaps. Experiments with planarian worms suggest possibilities even more fantastic. We can train planarians to react when we turn on light. A slight electric shock. The worm squinches. Eventually, the worm associates the light with a shock and squinches in anticipation. The shock never comes. But planarians are scavengers. They eat whatever they can get, including other planarian which have died. So when scientists fed ground-trained planarians to wild, naive worms, they found an amazing thing. These untrained planarians learned to dread the light much more quickly than they would have without this educated food. The conclusion seems inescapable. Some chemical factor in the ground and eaten planarian must carry a trace of memory. This doesn't mean that the engram is definitely made of molecules, but it does appear that special molecules may play a large role in carrying memories. But it seems indisputable that the engram has an electrical connection. So today, many researchers are trying to discover how nerve cells in the brain help create memories. An early researcher found that the entire cortex seems to operate in recalling knowledge, and that memory of difficult tasks was not stored in specific areas. With far better equipment, today's researchers can plant the tiniest electrodes deep inside the brain and record the activities of small areas or even single cells. It now appears that various parts of the brain cooperate in producing a memory. In fact, not long ago, one group of theorists felt that a memory was almost a conjured happening. Their theory has not been widely accepted, but it held that the brain worked like that remarkable machine called the holograph. The holograph beams lasers into a common space, and where they cross, a lifelike image called the hologram springs up in 3 dimensions. In our brains, too, something like a hologram may occur as we remember. A memory may spring up when pulsations from the brain's various parts interact. A memory may be a sort of bioelectric hologram. But all this is speculation. We still have little idea of how the brain creates mind and memory from molecules and nerves. We know that it's necessary for us to be able to forget. A freak of nature has made that terribly clear. A psychologist once studied a man who could memorize in perfect detail anything he read or saw. In fact, he could not forget. Instead of a blessing, it became a curse. "This is too much," he once cried out. "Each word calls up images. They collide with one another, and the result is chaos." Well, this man helps us see that forgetting is actually an ability crucial for making sense out of life. And the peculiar ways in which the mind changes its memories, those quirks that make eyewitness accounts so questionable, may also be part of a healthy, normal memory. Even changes that often come with age, loss of short-term memory and increasing clarity of long-term memory, may be good. To scientists, memory is an awesome mystery. They have pursued the engram deep into the brain, but they have not been able to find it there as yet. But they have discovered that memory is a 3-stage process: sensory information storage, short-term memory, and long-term memory. And though it may seem contradictory, scientists have discovered that forgetting can be an important part of memory.